All right, so here we go. I want to tell you a little bit about what I think is so neat about the Iliad. So this is from your PowerPoint. And the main theme of the Iliad is the rage of Achilles. Okay, he is our main character. To modern readers, he kind of comes off not so great, I think. I think most modern readers, or most students in my classes, when I ask them, who do you like the most? It's usually a mix of responses anywhere from Priam, who here he's depicted by Peter O'Toole in the film version of the Iliad called Troy, which makes big changes to the text, but it has some really good moments in it. So I think it's maybe worth a look. But a lot of students will say like Priam. A lot of students really feel a strong connection to Hector, which I think is interesting because from Homer, our author's point of view, Hector is the bad guy, right? He's the bad guy, but yet Homer depicts him in a way that clearly shows that he finds this guy admirable, even though he's on the opposing side. Homer's heroes and Homer's villains all seem to operate sort of within the same culture. They worship the same gods. They seem to have the same value systems. So it's kind of possible for Homer's readers to respect their enemies, I think, in that context. So maybe that's what's going on there. Achilles, on the other hand, seems to come off like a bit of a spoiled brat. That's what a lot of students say. So this poem is really about Achilles' rage. The poem begins pretty much at the inciting moment. So what makes Achilles angry? Okay? And it ends when he releases that anger. I want you to see if through the discussion board and the readings you can kind of discuss through how Achilles releases that anger, and I'm going to help you with this film clip we're going to try in a minute. But I want to kind of just briefly set up why Achilles is so angry. Why we maybe don't understand that as modern readers, okay? But why to Homer's readers, Achilles' anger, even his level of anger, makes perfect sense. All right, so what do you need to know about Achilles? Well, he is in a culture where kleos, glory, and tema, honor, are two of the most important things that a Greek warrior can have or aspire to. So when the play begins, a lot of the Greek warriors have their spoils of war, right? You've got Achilles, who is taken as hostage Briseis for his concubine. The sort of head of the Greek armies is Agamemnon. He's taken a concubine named Chryseis. Well, just in a nutshell, and you'll read this in book 1, the gods don't like the fact that Agamemnon has taken Chryseis. So the only way to sort of get the gods back on the Greek side is for Agamemnon to give up Chryseis. Why is that a problem? Agamemnon is the commander of the armies. He should have the spoils of war, a concubine. Okay, it's a patriarchal culture. You know, they take women as slaves from the conquered side. To them, that's like the gold medal that we give an Olympic athlete, you know, when he wins the decathlon or she wins the decathlon or something. So that's like having your medal taken away in this culture. To us, it maybe seems like not that big of a deal, but to them, it's like being stripped of your Super Bowl ring or something. So Agamemnon has to give up Chryseis. So what does he do? He says, well, I've been dishonored. I've lost my tema. Here, honor isn't an idea. It's the things you take after you win a battle. I've lost my tema, so I will take Achilles' tema. I will take Briseis. That is the inciting moment that triggers all of Achilles' rage. Because here's this guy, they're fighting on the same side. This guy has profoundly dishonored Achilles within the context of his own culture. All right, we can maybe think of ourselves as, in our modern day culture, perhaps we cultivate a sense of self-worth from within, right? The culture that Homer's writing about in the Iliad, their sense of self comes entirely from the external world, from the praises others heap upon them, from the things they have, like the spoils of victory, concubines, gold, what have you. So why is this a problem for Achilles? In his culture, to take away Briseis is to take away his honor. So what looks like a temper tantrum to us over somebody they've taken hostage, why are you getting so upset about this? Why are you refusing to fight? This has actually desecrated Achilles' personal sense of honor, and so he has to decide, do I want to keep participating in this fight? When the story begins, it's really about one man's realization that honor can be taken away, and if that's all we're fighting for, what's the point? All right. What's going to happen is Achilles is going to have a more personal reason to get back in the fight, and that's when his closest friend on earth is going to die fighting Hector. That's going to bring Achilles back into the battle. Patroclus, or Patroclus, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Patroclus is going to steal Achilles' armor, or borrow it, and go and fight Hector. Oh, here comes my dog. He's probably going to be in the frame here. So he's got one eye, so he might stumble around a bit. I call him the Cyclops. You're going to meet the Cyclops when we read the Odyssey. Hey, baby. So anyway, sorry for the canine interruption. So what's going to get Achilles back in the fight is not this idea of I'm going to reclaim honor. It's I'm going to get revenge for the grief that's been caused me by the loss of Patroclus. I'm going to take that revenge on Hector. All right. So the anger begins as a loss of honor and continues in a response to grief. All right. And so what I want us to consider is, what does Achilles have to learn that lets him let go of that anger? All right. First, it's anger about being dishonored. Then it's anger about losing somebody he cares about deeply. And the way he responds to that grief determines everything that happens for the rest of the Iliad. All right. So if we can get into this first reading, if we can get into the Iliad, and we can look for things like the figures of speech known as epic similes. Those are the 6 to 8 line comparisons, right? It'll say like, just as the eagle pursues the snake, so did Achilles pursue Hector around the walls of Troy. That's kind of ad-libbing from memory, but those are figures of speech. Think of those as like sort of early versions of special effects in movies. All right, so if we can look for those things, appreciate the figures of speech in the way that they are meant to sort of enrich the reading experience for Homer's readers or listeners. If we can do that, if we can attend to the themes, Achilles' anger, and how he's able to release that anger, I think we can get a lot out of this. And our understanding of Achilles is going to ground our discussion going forward. All right, so just to wrap up before I show this film clip, one thing I'll mention, I don't have this in the PowerPoints anywhere. You don't need to know it. It's just for your own sort of edification. If you take any anthropology classes, like cultural anthropology, you might study the way different cultures operate. And I don't think they teach this as much anymore, but one term that might come up is shame cultures versus guilt cultures. Okay, well, what do I mean by that? If you think of guilt and shame, guilt is something you do to yourself, right? So if you feel guilty, why do you feel guilty? Well, maybe it's because something you did didn't match up to your own sort of internal moral compass or whatever. Shame is something you do to somebody else, right? Shame is when you try to impose your sense of right and wrong on somebody else and say, you shouldn't have done that. All right. Now, how are we using those terms when we talk about cultures? Well, some anthropologists consider that our modern day, American culture is a guilt culture. In other words, for the most part, our sense of who we are comes internal, from ourselves. All right. And our sense of who other people are, like we might think somebody acts shamefully, but thinking that probably doesn't change their behavior necessarily. Achilles is from what is called a shame culture. All right, so for him, his value, his self-worth, mostly comes from the outside. All right, so just to remind ourselves, that's why it's such a big deal when he's dishonored by Agamemnon. Okay, at the beginning. So Achilles, whole sense of self, it's bound up in what other people think of him. That's why it's important to him at first, that maybe he wants to do things on the battlefield that will make his name live forever. Right. He is the only character in Greek literature who not only knows his fate, but has two possible fates. Almost all other characters have one choice. Achilles has two. He can choose, right? He can choose to go home and not continue with the Trojan War, and he'll live a long time and no one will ever remember his name. Or he can go back to the fight and he'll die young. He'll never see home again, but people will never stop speaking his name. Hey, look, it's 2015 as I make this video, and I'm talking about Achilles now, even though he's a fictional character. I guess he got what he wanted. But by the the end of the film, I'm thinking of the clip I'm going to show you. By the end of the poem, Achilles is not going to be so concerned about having his name live forever. He's going to be more worried about the grief he feels over the loss of his cousin Patroclus, his closest friend, and what he learns in this scene with Priam that I'm going to show you. Alright, so what I'm going to do is queue up this video. We'll see how it works. I'm taking a video of a video. I tried to post this directly to YouTube, and they banned me. Oops. So apparently that was a copyright violation. So in the context of a class like this, a class video, and poorer quality, I think maybe we're going to be okay. Please don't repost this outside of the course site, just in case. I don't want us to get shut down. But I'm going to show you just about a 5-minute clip here of Peter O'Toole as King Priam, King of Troy, father of Hector, coming to ask for the body of Hector back. Now this will make more sense when you read, alright? So maybe this is a place where you want to pause the video, do some of the reading, and then come back and watch how this scene is depicted. If you watch the film Troy, just know it's rated R for violence and some sexuality. This clip doesn't have any current violence. You will see Hector's corpse briefly at the end, so you may want to pause it when you see Achilles go outside the tent if that's not something you want to see. Otherwise, it's just a conversation between two characters. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cue that up for you, and we'll see what you think.
Are you? I have endured what no one on earth has endured before. I kiss the hands of the man who killed my son.
Priam? How did you get in here?
I know my own country better than the Greeks, I think.
You're a brave man.